Good afternoon. Welcome to the Broadband.Money webinar, Build Your Winning Broadband Grant Strategy. My name is Drew Clark. I'm editor and publisher of Broadband Breakfast, and I will be the host and moderator. But truthfully, the people we're going to be hearing from need very little introduction because this is a topic that so many of you have been waiting for, which is the Broadband.Money Grant Strategy Toolkit. And we're going to see a really awesome demonstration after we kick off and say hello to our three wonderful speakers. Let's just cue up what we hope to accomplish here in the next slide. So you got a sneak peek of two of our three guests, but for today, our goals are to introduce and demonstrate the Broadband.Money platform. And that's kind of the heart and the reason for why we're all here today. We also aim to highlight additional tools that will help improve your broadband grant planning and applications. And we are going to have a discussion, of course. We're going to talk about why the Broadband.Money toolkit and tools will make a difference in broadband grant planning. So let's go ahead and let everyone in who's going to be here, and I will say a word or two about each of our three additional panelists. Hello from afar, Scott and Lori and Bernie. It is great to see each of you. As I mentioned just a moment ago, I'm really just kicking this off, and I will do a little bit in guiding discussion after we hear more. But our main attractions are Lori Adams, the Senior Director of Broadband Policy and Funding Strategy at Nokia. And Lori is a key member of the Nokia Government Affairs team, and she helps develop the strategies and tools to enable increased company participation in federal, state, and international programs that support infrastructure deployment. Lori, so good to have you on.
Thank you, Drew. It's great to be here and in person with Scott, of course. I've been in my office for years, so it's really exciting to be live with someone to do a show.
Lori is a veteran of the industry with more than 20 years of experience, and she knows the field extremely well. I've known Lori for more than a decade as we worked and interacted on several broadband projects a decade or more ago. So she knows her stuff. Next up will be Scott Woods. Scott is the Vice President of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships for Ready.net. And I work extremely closely with Scott. In fact, I normally can just walk across the room and see him, but right now I'm across the hall so that we don't have any kind of echo here. Scott, prior to joining Ready.net, was at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, and there he was the former inaugural director of the Office of Minority Broadband Initiatives in the NTIA's Office of Internet Connectivity and Growth. And he was the principal liaison between that office and key strategic partners and external stakeholder groups. He is a telecom lawyer with probably a similar amount of experience as Lori, I would gather. And Scott is also a podcaster. His second episode of Ready or Not is out. It's a great show and drills into different aspects of the broadband infrastructure and deployment facets. Scott, welcome. So happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Drew. It's my pleasure to be here with Lori, obviously with Bernie, and with you as well as we come full circle. Actually, I remember we called back to Mountain Connect when it was first announced that I would be joining the Ready team. You all were the first, among the first people that I talked to, and actually did an interview for a telecompetitor with Bernie. So it's my pleasure to be here with everyone today, and I hope they enjoy the show and the webinar and the demonstration today.
Well, and it was so awesome to hear Alan Davidson, the administrator of NTIA, give a shout out to you and to others at NTIA, but particular reference there to the great work you did at NTIA. And then batting cleanup on our roster here is Bernie Arneson. Bernie is a broadband nerd, and he said I could say that. Seriously, Bernie's the editor-in-chief of Telecompetitor, and he brings more than 20 years of telecom experience to Pivot, and he will also has been quite close, quite familiar with this process and the Broadband.Money tools, and so we'll look forward to the insights you offer to this as well. So, Scott, let's pass it over to you for a brief moment.
Absolutely. Again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. You're about to see a comprehensive demonstration of the Broadband.Money platform, the geospatial insights and business analytics that we've prepared for the audience today. Again, if you recall, for those of you who participated or joined us in Mountain Connect, our CEO, Jace Wilson, launched a preview of that at Mountain Connect. Here we are now full circle with the full demonstration for the audience. And then we look forward to speaking after the demonstration on how we can be of benefit and service for providers and local communities as we move forward through all of the grant processes that are out there, federal, state, and local. So sit back and enjoy the demonstration, and then we'll see you back after that for a very lively discussion with our panelists. So Drew, I will kick it back over to you and we'll get the show started.
Let's roll.
Our geospatial platform presents essential insights from all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. territories. It provides you with the comprehensive data you need to help you get your share of broadband grants. Broadband.Money's map combines and presents more than 200 public and proprietary data sources from official data sets. These include the American Community Survey data, Homeland Infrastructure Foundation level data, and the National Address Database. You can rely on these data sets and more to present a well-rounded and accurate application. Here are some additional data layers our mapping platform provides: network facilities and infrastructure, key demographics, broadband performance, and environmental factors. The data team at Broadband.Money ensures that the number of meaningful data sources is constantly growing and relevant, and that it is accurate and up to date. States and portal users can customize their views by adding their own unique data sets. You can use Broadband.Money's geospatial platform to research specific areas of interest and gather comprehensive evidence to build a holistic broadband grant application. Start off by exploring your potential areas of interest. Selecting a census block reveals key insights on broadband performance, local competition, and key demographics. Get the lay of the land. Break down key demand points across categories in a single census block. Each block displays total road miles, land area, and the number of households and housing units. Help identify digital equity and inclusion needs with socio-demographic data, such as poverty, income, and education levels. Compare performance data, including latency and packet loss, across different sources, such as FCC 477 data, MLab and Ookla speed test data, as well as other sources. View historical data to better track and understand how performance has changed over time. See what other local providers reportedly serve in the area. Do they provide fiber or wireless services? Do they serve both residential and commercial users? What are their starting plan costs and their maximum advertised upload and download speeds? Our maps include all of this information and more. Get key details on whether the census block has been allocated grants from other programs, such as the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund and the Connect America Fund, by clicking on the funding tab. Alongside the bidder name, tier, and latency, see if any awards have defaulted. If so, these areas are now eligible for BEAD or other federal, state, or local grant programs. To easily pinpoint areas of unserved and underserved communities, filter by attributes such as the 477 data or Ready Strength Rank that analyzes existing data via the platform's algorithms. You can also use this data to get a clear picture of the locations you should be prepared to challenge as unserved or underserved. To identify key stakeholders, local coordination is an essential component when it comes to broadband grant applications like BEAD. Use our geospatial platform to easily identify key stakeholders for collaboration. Filter to see if your area of interest falls within tribal boundaries. Turn on the Rural Electric Cooperative layer to see the service boundaries and contact information of local electric co-ops. Identify community anchor institutions and local businesses in your area, such as public schools, libraries, hospitals, community support organizations, and faith-based organizations, such as churches, synagogues, and mosques. View existing network infrastructure, such as the official FCC tower layer, or upload your own wireless and/or fiber network assets to the portal. When you're ready, you can create and tag areas of interest to get even more detailed insights and business intelligence analyses. To create an area, simply upload a shapefile, if you have one prepared, or for large county level project areas, easily select one from our library of county shapefiles. For maximum flexibility, use the freehand draw tool to outline the exact boundary of your project area. When you're done, click into your newly created project area for an overall analysis, such as the breakdown of unserved and underserved housing units. In the Yield on Cost tab, input your take rate, revenue, cost per mile, cost per drop, and operating margin to get a rough estimate of the economics and grant needs of your target areas before conducting detailed engineering or financial modeling. In the Analysis tab, easily aggregate, compare, and contrast multiple project areas. Gain a deeper understanding of your project areas with more detailed metrics, such as current provider coverage and the breakdown of demand points by performance rank. Attach specific project areas to your application model to automatically generate grant application answers. As you continue to research your areas of interest, get a head start on building your application model. Start by filling out your profile, which creates a general baseline profile that will be used across the various broadband grant programs. Once your profile is ready, start building your application model for programs like BEAD and Middle Mile. Get an in-depth walkthrough of each grant program, including important guides and resources you can refer to as you step through the application. From a single interface, answer questions with the help of detailed instructions, tips, and templates written by industry experts. Invite collaborators, such as consultants, community partners, investors, and other stakeholders to work on building out your application model. Source matching funds and letters of credit from multiple capital providers in a single process. Unlike prior broadband grant programs, you're required to submit funding proof with your grant applications, so we recommend you get going right away. When it's time to file, you can review and submit your application to one or more agencies with confidence that everyone is on the same page. Grant program winners can also easily comply with ongoing monitoring, reporting, and performance management requirements with Broadband.Money's outage and subscriber management system. Deliver prospective and current subscribers a seamless experience with a subscriber portal that handles billing, payment, and plan management with ease. Communities in need can easily sign up for the Affordable Connectivity Program's credit, which provides up to $75 per household per month through turnkey ACP. BEAD funding is tied to the concept of the number of broadband serviceable locations and network performance. So it's crucial that local government leaders and broadband advocates have a precise understanding of the connectivity needs of their communities. Broadband.Money provides local leaders like mayors, county executives, broadband community champions, and service providers the tools to conduct a comprehensive broadband audit of your community. Gather real-time performance and qualitative survey data from your communities, generate statistically sound analysis and reports that accurately ascertain an area's actual broadband needs and help determine where the grant funding should flow. As part of the broadband audit, launch your own customized branded instance of the Broadband Measurement Kit, a site which conducts multiple performance tests alongside a qualitative survey to get the ground reality of community broadband needs. Before starting, test takers are prompted to make sure their testing environment adheres to guidelines written by trusted industry experts. While the suite of performance tests run, test takers are prompted to answer survey questions that help them get a better understanding of broadband availability and need outside of the performance measurements. The Community Broadband Measurement Kit compares results across different kinds of tests and reminds test takers to retake the test multiple times for better accuracy. Using Broadband.Money's built-in distribution tools, community administrators can easily and efficiently encourage communities to take the test. As the results come in, gain a real-time, holistic understanding of your community's level of need for broadband grants. The Community Broadband Audit lets you gather and submit defensible, transparent data so that your community gets connected, whether you're establishing eligibility or defending your proposal in a challenge process. For access to broadband grant resources, tools, and events, join the Broadband.Money community. Stay up to date on the latest news, read detailed guides on key documents like the BEAD and middle mile notices of funding opportunities, and attend specialized office hours with our experts and participate in Ask Me Anything conversations with key industry representatives, national policymakers, national advocates, and thought leaders. For more information, please see us at Broadband.Money. Please enroll at Broadband.Money. Please join our community at Broadband.Money.
Well, thank you for that presentation. Let us go ahead and open the view up to make sure we're seeing everyone. And we want to remind you that, of course, this webinar is and has been recorded, so it will be available for those who register for it. And go ahead and ask your questions in the question answer field. We also get them on the chat field too. So let's turn it over to Scott. Great demo. You walk through it very systematically. Could you just talk a little bit? You've now been at your role at Ready.net for 4 months since your departure from NTIA, where you obviously were quite instrumental in many broadband programs. How is this transition going for you?
Well, thank you, Bernie, for asking. It's been a whirlwind, transition. I've enjoyed every minute of it. There is a very smart group at Ready.net and Broadband.Money, probably among the smartest people on the planet. And fortunately, they all want to solve the digital divide. And so I get to work with a bunch of fantastic, smart people, as I said, and I get to create, great partnerships like with Lori. And so it's been a fantastic time. I'm enjoying myself. But more importantly, we're developing in partnership with all of our partners the tools that local providers and local communities need to take advantage of this historic once-in-a-lifetime investment to ensure that we can address the inequity in broadband and digital equity for all of our communities. So it's I really appreciate the question, and yes, I'm having a fantastic time. But more importantly, we're working for local communities and for providers.
So Lori, it's been just I think a week, right? Maybe 2 weeks. Time flies when you're working on broadband, and the partnership between Nokia and Broadband.Money. Could you just give us a quick snapshot of what that is and does, and how that will help Nokia and Broadband.Money together?
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Yeah, absolutely. We're thrilled to have announced this partnership. You're right, it was a week ago, just after Labor Day. And why we are so excited about this is because, as you saw from the demonstration, there's really groundbreaking program being developed here at Broadband.Money with the data and the information that's really at your fingertips that enables you to research, discover, find the grant programs and figure out how to apply for it. And you have all the information you need at your fingertips. And, we've been talking about at Nokia, the customer journey and what our customers need, and questions that are swirling around that we hear a lot are, what are these funding programs? How do we access them? How are there resources that you can provide with grant funding? And, we're not, we don't support those types of services in-house. So we're very excited to find a partner who does do those things so that we can help support our customers from end to end. And so that was really the core influencer for why we reached out to Broadband.Money, and ultimately we came together at a partnership.
And if you were just speaking a little bit about the kind of the journey, the customer journey, what is the sort of the biggest questions you hear from your equipment customers about, hey, there's billions of dollars out there, how do I figure out how to use it? What are the kind of the things you're hearing about how to respond to them?
So, you have a number of programs that are rolling out right now. You have the Capital Projects Fund, you have the Middle Mile program at NTIA, there's state programs that are utilizing ARPA money, there's RDOF, there's Reconnect. And so there's a lot of confusion between when these programs start, the eligibility requirements, which are all slightly different. So there's a lot of education that needs to happen in helping sort out the timeline for these programs, what a customer needs to do in order to start the process, where can they get information. And so, a lot of the questions that we get are focused around that. We hear they hear about the BEAD program, they realize that the timeline doesn't really put money in the hands of providers for another year or more. So, but they want to know what they can do now, right? There's a lot of things that providers can and our customers can do now to prepare for it. And part of what I think is really confusing, adding a layer of complexity, is the fact that for the first time, all of this money, with the exception of a few small programs, are being rolled out across the states, right? So for the first time, you have a 50-state strategy if you're a provider, and every state is going to have its own flavor, its own rules, its own feel for what they're asking for. And and that's another reason why we're actively seeking a partner like Broadband.Money, because anyone who's in this business knows that in order to scale, you need automation. And so that's just another reason why we were so excited to be partnering with Broadband.Money.
Well, Scott, maybe you could just add a quick bit on this, which is what insights and learnings have you gained already from the multiple hundred people that have gravitated to the Broadband.Money community?
No, absolutely. I think great question, Drew. I think Lori's spot on, right? It's the ambiguity in all of these programs, even though, coming from NTIA, I'll give NTIA credit. I think they did a good job in laying out the criteria and the NOFOs, and for the middle mile, setting up the portal. But there's still significant ambiguity in the provider community and in local communities about how all of this is going to come together, how they should work with their state broadband offices, how they should conduct local coordination, right? How do they gather and report empirical data to support their application process? So for us, the platform is a way to utilize, next generation technology and algorithms to update, if you will, all of these processes into a seamless process that both providers and communities and state broadband offices and advocates can use. Why I'm so excited about the partnership with Nokia is they are best in business, right? They're provider agnostic, right? They work across wireless and fixed and cloud. I mean, they do everything. And so we benefit off of that knowledge base and that partnership. And again, to do it for the benefit of the providers and local communities in which they serve.
Bernie, you've been around the block quite a bit in the broadband world. What is your thoughts and perspective on what we're seeing with the National Telecommunications Information Administration's Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the BEAD program for the broadband equity, access, and deployment? What are you seeing happening, and what are your thoughts about some of the things that Scott and Lori have talked with us about here?
Yeah, thank you, Drew, and sorry that I had to outshine you guys on the dressing front. You guys didn't get the memo about today's dress code, but appreciate the question. There's a lot to unpack, and I think some of what has already been said in terms of the ambiguity and the number of programs that are at play now. So there's a few elements. There's what I work with and cover on Telecompetitor, a lot of the carriers that have been serving rural America for decades, and so there's an element of kind of like welcome to the party, right? We've been at this for so long, and now we're seeing so many new entrants come thanks to the funding, and so there is some level of concern around is everybody prepared to do that and experienced to do that? We've seen some of that kind of scrutiny come to play in the past couple of months. But there's also a tremendous amount of excitement, I think, because while this is a tremendous amount of funding, as Lori pointed out, a lot of focus on BEAD today, but there's so much more that's going on between ARPA and CARES and Reconnect. I mean, RDOF, you could go on. And so, when you add all that up together, it's a significant amount of money, and we're, I think, in a really good position to maybe not totally solve the digital divide or bring service to the underserved and unserved, but make a really good dent in it. And so there's a lot of excitement, I think, from those traditional carriers who see the opportunity to do what they've already been doing for so many decades and spread that out across to, you know, a lot more of the country and bring good quality, high quality broadband to so many more people who need it and deserve it, regardless of where they live and what their economic circumstances.
We're getting several questions through the Q&A tab. Feel free to send them along and ask more. Let me go ahead and ask one. This is from Tarek Hunt. Can we apply for grant money through the application? Scott, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, so not to get super technical, but as you know, for middle mile, there's a specific portal that's set up for NTIA. We're waiting for additional information on the BEAD and other programs, but the portal is set up that through the development of what we call APIs, and I won't go get too technical, but you can export everything from the platform and build your application and submit it to whatever the requirements are for those programs. So the complicated answer is yes, but there's more to it that goes on behind the scenes. But the idea and the goal and the process is your information that you submit onto the platform will be seamlessly provided to whatever program you apply to, state, federal, or local.
Mm-hmm. We've got a number of questions about is the demo video available online in addition to being available to those who attend this webinar? What should we tell people to see and to go in terms of seeing and testing it out, Scott?
So tell them to sign up at Broadband.Money. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Sign up for Broadband.Money along with this demo, and other resources are available to you for free. Right. So again, sign up at Broadband.Money and you will get access to this demo. You can also visit our website at Ready.net to get an overview of our comprehensive software solutions and package that we bring to communities and for providers.
Mm-hmm. Brenda Trainer asks kind of, you've answered some parts of this. Is this a subscription service or one-time purchase? Again, this is a free service. Is there anything you'd add to that, Scott?
So, I mean, you can sign up to the digital community for free, but obviously there are free components to the platform. A lot of the publicly available data we provide on the platform for free. We still require sign up. But again, when we get into the more proprietary and the algorithmic processes and features of the platform, there is a fee associated with that. And that is a subscription, yes.
So I want to dive into the broadband mapping component, and this is obviously a topic of intense interest right now. And in particular, let's just go off your recorded presentation, Scott. You talked about how, this will allow comparisons with areas served by the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund or the Connect America Fund or the Department of Agriculture's Reconnect program. And then you even said you can upload your own assets. Could you talk a little bit more about that kind of ability to compare and contrast tools, particularly mapping tools?
Yep. So I will add, I don't want to throw the FCC under the bus, but I will anyway. Yeah, I think that what we've learned in the past week or so just adds to ambiguity and disappointment. I'm speaking for myself now. I don't speak for anyone else on the panel. But we feel as though, empirical data is very important, and that providers and local communities must understand and establish, empirical-based connectivity profiles using speed test data, not solely, and other data, but using data to verify and justify and validate what they're getting. And so if billions of dollars will be allocated based on unserved and underserved, definitions that the NTIA, for example, has established at 100/20 as the benchmark, then we ought to have empirical data to be able to verify and validate whether there are community locations, household and businesses that actually get that. And so we feel, notwithstanding what the FCC is doing, state broadband offices, individual communities, and providers have an opportunity to understand and develop and access, their own data. And again, we're not afraid of data and facts, right? It's good, to understand what you have and then be able to shape a reasonable, methodological sound, challenge process as we move forward to understand and allocate all of this funding that's coming forward. So I'm just going back to understanding your data on the household and community level. I think that is so fundamentally important. And there are tools and there are speed test data and a lot of different data now that we can utilize that helps transparency and accuracy so that we know exactly where broadband is and where broadband is not in our communities.
Lori and also Bernie, tell us a little bit about how you view this issue about broadband data that's currently available in various forms and formats, and that which the FCC is kind of trying to correct and fix at this moment.
Right. So the broadband data collection process through the FCC, right, was created under its own act. And what they're achieving to do is to create a fabric, as they call it, that identifies all the locations in the United States and what their service levels are. Prior to this, right now, we have the old 477 processes, which are based on census block areas. So it's a much broader coverage-based map. This new fabric is anticipating to be location-specific information so that you're not talking about broader census areas, you're talking about individual locations. And one of the purposes of the map is to be the single point of truth for all of these funding programs. It's supposed to provide us with a clear viewpoint of all of the households across the United States that need to be served and who would presumably be eligible for the BEAD program. And but one of the challenges that, of course, we have is one, collecting this data, and it's a very complicated process. There's a lot of disinformation out there, confusion about how to participate in this, both from a initial submission level, which closed on September 1st for providers, but also during the challenge process. But the one thing to keep in mind is that the fabric is collecting things that are looking in the past, right? They're collecting data on networks that are built, on locations that are receiving funding today. So if you're thinking about all of these other programs, like just yesterday, Tennessee announced $400 million worth of projects that they're funding in the state of Tennessee. Those projects haven't started yet, so they aren't captured in the fabric. But yet, when NTIA reaches the point where they're allocating funding based off of the fabric, there needs to be taken into account projects that are in process and not yet built, in addition to things that are looking backwards that are already built.
Bernie?
Well, that was quite the comprehensive overview. I'm not sure I have much to add to that. Thank you, Lori. I will say, I think it is, I don't envy the FCC. Let's just say that. It is very easy to stand on the sideline and throw rocks at those guys about this process. It's, as Lori mentioned, it's hugely complicated. The public policy of internet and telecom and broadband over the past 80 years or whatever has led us to this point where we are, and so that is not going to get fixed anytime soon in my view. And I am worried this process is leading to a bit of a train wreck is one way people have kind of characterized it.
What do you mean by a train wreck, Bernie? Tease that out a little bit.
Well, it's just the challenge process and whether the data is accurate and who's calling balls and strikes. Like who is the ultimate determiner of what is accurate data? I'm not sure that that's been figured out. And so you're going to kind of have these back and forth arguments about what data is accurate. Is the state level data accurate? Is you have all the, not all the states, but many of the states kind of doing their own fabric, and that data may not match up with the FCC's data, and then you have individual providers that are going to provide their data. So it just seems like it's a bit of a hot mess, and I'm not sure we really understand how it's going to get all figured out.
Well, what's the best guess that we have for figuring it out? Like, again, this is a critical question that fortunately we have some tools available to address a little bit. Scott, what are some of your thoughts about the way that Broadband.Money and other data sources such as the measurement lab collection of information and other sources of data, how do we kind of use these to test and to ground truth the maps that the FCC is in the process of collecting?
Great question, Drew. Let me backtrack a little bit, because I think I agree with my panelists. Like, the FCC's job is very difficult, right? And so we don't envy that. I just think that you could have more transparency and more clear guidance about the process and who's going to own the data. And what's been leaked or shown so far just leads to more questions and ambiguity, when I think it'd be probably more clear, more straightforward guidance on the way forward. So I've always often am critical of the FCC, but I don't envy them and the position that they're in. So let me first say that. I think the NTIA said it best and laid it out in the NOFOs, right? It can come upon the state broadband offices, so each state, to develop their own challenge process, right? You don't have to go by the FCC challenge guidelines as they see fit. That money, that process is going to determine the initial allocation that's going to the states, right? Just that initial allocation. Ultimately, though, each state will have the opportunity to craft its own challenge process for unserved and underserved locations and households, in their state. And so what I'm advising, what we're, working with, the Broadband Mapping Coalition, for example, so it's not just a Broadband.Money issue or platform. We're working with, academicians and MLab and Ookla and others that provide data on their platforms on what makes sense, like, methodological guidelines that make sense. I personally believe, and we believe here, Broadband.Money, empirical data has to be a part of that. You have to be able to understand and own your own data. And so we are, encouraging, if not recommending, states, get together and craft and develop their own challenge processes that make sense, notwithstanding what happens, at the FCC with the initial allocation of funding that'll come from the fabric, i.e. the broadband data map. So we believe there's an opportunity there. There's also an opportunity at NTIA. As you all know, NTIA has had granular maps under the National Broadband Mapping Program that it's had for several years, right? So there's an opportunity there as well. I think in any process, we just ask for transparency and clear guidance, so that the providers and communities know exactly what they need to do. But again, I stand on the principle of empirical data has got to be a part of that, and not just tell me what you can do or what you advertise that you can do. That's fine, but let's test it. Trust but verify. And we all know that, just for example, you may have a gig service up to a gig, right? You're not going to get a gig symmetrical in many instances, but I shouldn't get 100 over 50, right? And we can discount, testing conditions. There are a lot of things that we can discount or actually put parameters on to explain, empirical data. But I still believe that empirical data has to be a foundation of determining unserved and underserved locations across the country.
And Drew, if I can just jump in for a second here, because one of the things that makes Broadband.Money so special and a bit of a unicorn in our industry is that they have all of this data together in one platform, right? But and I know a lot of us out there have looked at projects before or look at network planning, and you have to research this on your own, right? And pull in all of these different resources and information. And it's very time consuming and it's clunky because you don't have it in one place. And what the Broadband.Money platform does is it collapses all of its data in a single location where you can use it to plan your network, to look at what's out there, to look at what's areas are most likely to be eligible for funding in the BEAD program, so that it saves you a significant time and effort. But it's also an opportunity for you to understand not just what your own data means, but just the data that's out there. And so just wanted to point that out.
Well, and I wonder if you couldn't speak to one of the things you showed in the demo there, Scott, about how a city like the city of Detroit can customize its own speed test and questionnaire. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, Scott?
Yeah, so we're launching the community broadband toolkit or kit later this month, and it's fully customizable by our users. So it won't be branded Broadband.Money. Each instance will be branded individually by the community or the provider or the state or the broadband office. And again, it's an opportunity to run right now 3 different speed tests and a qualitative survey. And if you do that multiple times in the community with hopefully a significant number of household locations and business locations, you establish a pretty effective connectivity profile of where broadband is, as Lori stated, where you would, arguably want to go and build. But, data is a key foundation of knowledge and understanding of where we need to go. And if we're going to tie billions and billions of dollars, as my friend Leslie Durham says, the money with the B, if we're tying that to, ultimate determinations of where broadband is and is not based on a speed threshold, communities and providers should have access to all the data, not just speed data, but demographic data, socioeconomic data. All of that would, build your application profile and the need for investment decisions of where to go with these funds and with these applications.
We have a question from James Pennington. We're a small facilities-based voice and data provider in North Florida. We've steered a wide berth from any government program in the past. Every time we've seen a program, it seems too complicated and long to justify energy and resources. Are we coming to the dance too late?
No. Unless
we're not
applying for middle mile, which ends on September 30th, and you still have time. Again, I think, if I can just, this is where I think our partnership with Nokia is so beneficial, is because we don't have to do it all ourselves. We have a partner now that comes to the table with a wealth of knowledge and understanding and tools and resources, that our customers and clients can benefit individually and collectively. And so again, it's not too late. Again, please, I don't want to just pitch here on Broadband.Money, but this is our webinar. Sign up on Broadband.Money and, and get that process started. But there are a number of resources there. Nokia has resources on its website that explain all of the federal and state programs and local programs that are out there, and take advantage of the free information and resources that are there to understand what the requirements are, and then be able to move forward.
And Drew, I would add to that. I think one of the things we need to think about as an industry, and that's a great question. There are lots of providers kind of in that boat, I think, is there's so much effort now being thrown at this problem and all this funding. I think if you haven't done something previously, like now is the time to do it, right? Because I don't think this is going to continue forever. And so there's going to be a point at which that funding is going to dry up, right? And 5-10 years from now, I don't see the feds coming back with another 100 billion. I mean, maybe they will, but I don't think you want to miss out on the opportunity that's right here, right? And in hopes that something might come down the line. So certainly would encourage folks who haven't looked at these types of programs before. Probably the time is now to really take it seriously.
We have another question here from Kimberly Young about Broadband.Money collecting data reported by the states doing their own data collection and verification. Is that something you could address, Scott?
Yeah, so through what we call API customization, we for our customers and clients, you can upload and include any of your existing data that you, for example, a state broadband office has collected. If you're a provider, any of your network assets and data that you have on your customers and or network can also be included and uploaded and customized in the platform. So, so to answer the question, yes, all that can be done in the platform, not just what the data that's shown or the data that's in there right now.
I have two questions that I'd love to get everyone's response on. One is about timelines and timetables. So like, what should people be looking for as the action points over the next weeks, months, even year? I think you made reference to that time frame, Lori. So schedules and timetables. And secondly, what is the two most important things that providers and communities should be doing at this point in the juncture? Let's hear from Scott, and then Bernie, and then Lori.
Okay, I'll take the two things I think communities and providers should be doing right now is you should be meeting with and interacting with and establishing relationships with the state broadband office, right? They are wrestling with the same issues that we all are now. Let's all be a part of that planning process right now. Let's be around the table right now and be a part of those discussions. I think that's very important to be part at that table when that pre-planning and planning process is going on right now. Number two, I'll tweet our horn again. Like, I have to understand where broadband is and is not in your community. As a foundational, fundamental matter. I think that's very important. And also there are NTIA resources available. NTIA has office hours and information on its website. Nokia has information on this website. We do as well, gathering that information and data to understand the requirements of the program. So you don't have to read a 600-page NOFO. We've done a good job, I think, between our two companies of breaking that information down to where it's feasible and it makes sense. And then ask questions, right? Let's engage. You can engage on the Broadband.Money digital community. You can engage in other forums, on Telecompetitor, for example. Engage and ask questions because this is not going to solve itself. This is a very hard road ahead. It's just a challenge. It's difficult. But if we have more people we have involved in the process, I think the better it'll be and more transparent and accountable we can be with the funds that are coming down through NTIA and the other programs. Lori or Bernie.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a ton more to add to that. That was a great response, Scott. I guess the only, if I were to kind of narrow it down to two things, it's one would be really start building those coalitions and partnerships in your local communities. I mean, I think NTIA, obviously put a lot of emphasis on that, and hence the states are going to do that as well, and make sure you've got some really strong partnerships, coalitions within the service area that you're aiming to serve. And then the other thing I would add, and I know Scott would add to this as well, is get that match capital lined up. We know that that's going to be a big piece of this. It's at least 25%, but I think if you can even go higher than that, that's probably going to strengthen your application. So it's never too early to get that figured out and lined up and ready to go for when you have to apply.
And of course, they took everything I was going to say, but just to focus on the partnerships for a moment, I cannot underestimate how important these partnerships are going to be. If you look at the state grant programs that are rolling out now and have announced awards, you will see an emphasis on partnerships. You will find that communities that have applied have a service provider they're working with, and vice versa. It's extremely important to get those partnerships nailed down. Now is the time, if you're in the private sector, to start talking to your local communities to get those letters of interest, letters of partnership, because it's going to be very meaningful when you do apply. It's certainly one way to increase the likelihood of success of your application if you have partnerships as a part of it.
And I'll add one more component to that. Don't ignore local coordination. It's significant. It is a significant part of BEAD. It's often very challenging and hard to do, but it must be done. And so again, the more partners you have, the more you are in line and entrenched in the community. Again, you can reflect that in your application as required by the notice of funding opportunities, particularly for the BEAD. And then if I can add one more component into that, just to complicate this whole thing, don't forget about digital equity, right? Those themes are woven, interwoven, if you will, particularly at the federal program between the BEAD and Digital Equity Act program. So you've got to have digital equity as a fundamental component, even in your infrastructure program. These are tangential strategies that should be executed simultaneously. So again, don't forget about digital equity and inclusion. That ultimately is the human capital component. We're spending a lot of time, on the infrastructure and the map, well, of course, but at the end of the day, as I stated in my podcast, if I can hype that up a little bit, ultimately we're talking about people and businesses that power communities that ultimately end up for the benefit of the country as a whole. So I would add that as well.
Well, it's been great to get these perspectives and to get this demo. I think, Scott, what a great treat we've had to be able to see this. If you want to see more, go to Broadband.Money, sign up, enroll, pre-enroll to get the free access to this information. And as you and others have pointed out, there's incredible amount of resources on Broadband.Money/blog and discuss.broadband.money, so you can learn and see what people are sharing with one another about these programs. On behalf of our guests, Lori Adams, Senior Director of Broadband Policy and Funding Strategy at Nokia, Scott Woods, Vice President of Community Engagement and Strategic Partnerships at Ready.net, and Bernie Adams, Editor and Chief of Telecompetitor. I'm Drew Clark of Broadband Breakfast. We'll see you on the next webinar.